everybody, it's 2 o'clock. We'll call the meeting to order, and if you would join me, join us in the invocation led by Commissioner Strickland and the pledge by me.
Let us pray. Our most gracious Heavenly Father, we thank thee for this community and all that live and work here. We ask that you will ask their blessings upon the first responders that protect us both here and abroad. All of these things we ask in thy name. Amen.
Amen. Join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, thank you very much. We have a full agenda today, and so we'll get right in it. The first item on the agenda is to receive an update on the Terry Creek site proposal cleanup, and Dr. DeFur, I will turn it over to you.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here, and I appreciate the opportunity to make a brief presentation. I do not have a PowerPoint, so I'll save you the trouble of that.
Sit down.
I do have an information sheet, and I want to make sure that everybody has a copy of this technical assistance report that my organization has prepared. As some of you know, as the technical advisor, I provide services to the community through a grant from the Environmental Protection Agency, which makes sure that the local community has the funding and the resources to participate at a technical level, so that I get to interpret all the jargon and make it understandable for everyone involved. There are a couple of points that I want to make regarding the issue at hand. So in the technical assistance report, I indicated where we are in the process. The process now has turned to EPA issuing what they intend to do about the cleanup, and they have to file that with the court under a consent decree that they sign with Hercules. So these are the two parties involved in this situation. The consent decree, for those of you who are familiar with it, and I imagine a number of you are, dictates exactly who is going to do what at a general level, and when. There may be a schedule in there, and it stipulates a number of conditions that need to be met. It also stipulates how either one of the parties will take action if they feel as though the other party is not meeting their end of the bargain. The significance of the consent decree cannot be overstated. It is the means by which we can ensure that EPA will have the cleanup conducted the way it's supposed to be. It's also a means by which a responsible party may either press EPA to make sure they keep up their end of the bargain, or, as I have seen in other places, attempt to get out of doing what we think they should be doing because the language is vague or the language is unclear, or an item of importance, or which becomes important later, is not mentioned in the consent decree. I urge you to have your council take a look at the consent decree. It's one of the shortest components of the 5 documents that they've put on the website, and see and make sure that there isn't anything that shouldn't be and that there's nothing missing. The second thing that I want to point that I want to make is one that I have made to citizens, and I will make it again and again and again. Your voice matters. As the county representatives, your voice matters probably more than any. And the reason it matters is because you're the elected officials for the community here. Every situation in which I have seen either an improvement or a high-quality cleanup at a Superfund site has involved one in which the local community, either the city or the county or both, have exercised their voices. So a letter from you to the involved parties, which also means that you send it to the Department of Justice, which is the official agency receiving comments here, and I always send it to EPA at the same time because they're going to be looking at it. A letter to them tells them that you are involved, and it also is the opportunity to tell them what you want to see from the cleanup and from the action. One of the most important features of this consent decree is that it relies upon the document released a year ago on how they're going to do the cleanup. That is usually called a record of decision. In this particular situation, it's an interim record of decision. Now, an interim record of decision may be issued under a couple of different circumstances. The one here, indicated by EPA in 47 places that I counted in the documents, is because they are uncertain about the nature of the toxicology of the wastes which are involved here at the Terry Creek outfall. It's 2.5 acres. It's the Terry Creek. Now, an official communication with EPA headquarters, the office that is completing said toxicological review, indicates that that document will be completed and released before the end of the summer, which means that an interim is not necessary. It can be final, and that means it's more certain, and it means EPA can actually make a decision on the basis of the wastes that are there rather than what they indicate in the document. So that's a very important point, and I don't know how the EPA regional office addresses that question about transforming an interim record of decision to a regular or final record of decision. Now, they're going to have to do this process again. They're going to have to do this process again because this 2.5 acre piece of ground, and everybody knows where it is, it's at the outfall ditch, and it's just before the causeway. It's 2.5 acres. That is referred to as Operable Unit 1. Operable Unit 2 is the former plant site. That's about 25 acres. Operable Unit 3 is parts of Terry Creek and Dupre Creek, where the water flows into. The other operable units that are not numbered, but they're named, are all of the dredge spoil disposal areas out there in the marsh. Those are all part of this site. So it's not just a small little section, and they're going to have to address those sections as well in future years, in future actions. Finally, they stipulate in the consent decree and other areas that may be designated. So some people would say if they find toxaphene manufacturing wastes further down the road or in another place, I would suggest, based on my experience, when they find it somewhere else, not if. But there is some probability, non-zero probability, that they're going to find additional waste somewhere else at another time in another place, and they need to be able to incorporate that into their cleanup remedy. It's very important that they do that, and they need to be encouraged, and they need to be supported in this. So a letter to EPA is not just, you didn't do this right, but these are the good things. We want to make sure that they are maintained in full strength. Now, there are a couple of points that are omitted that give me pause, and there are a couple of things that could be included in the consent decree, but they're silent on it. The one that is excluded that gives me pause, and I've raised this in concern, is there's no attempt to clean up groundwater contamination within this region. And it's not just within the 2.5 acres, but emanating from the plant site. So we have an absent, a gap. What are we doing about groundwater contamination? So that's one concern that I have. The second one that I have is about protecting wildlife. Now, wildlife around here, it's a really important issue for a lot of different reasons, but there are a number of species of not rare and endangered and a couple of rare and endangered that are commonly found on that site. They use that site. They use part of it for nesting. They use part of it for roosting. Other species will use the creeks, maybe for feeding or maybe for migration or for spawning. And they have to be protected as well. And wildlife offer us an opportunity to monitor our success and monitor our progress. And that approach can and should be included in the consent decree. So the court can stipulate EPA will require wildlife monitoring for the presence of contaminants, and success will be measured by the reduction in the contaminant load. So that can be stipulated in the consent decree, and that can be added at this particular point. There's no reason not to. So one of the big issues in my mind, and a couple of other people who I've had conversations with on this same point, recognize that if EPA is going to be completing a more extensive and more accurate assessment of the toxicity of the wastes, then they should be waiting to complete the filing of the consent decree and the listing of the general cleanup plan in official court documents until they've incorporated that document into their record of decision here. So their record of decision is either premature or incomplete until they've incorporated that information. The monitoring of fish tissue is just one thing that EPA should be doing. They are automatically complying with other state and federal laws. This is a feature of all Superfund cleanups, that they must comply with those. They have to satisfy your water quality standards as well as their own. And so that's an important one, and that needs to be re-emphasized. So finally, I will say that the Glynn Environmental Coalition, that has been working on this site for more than 20 years and has participated completely throughout the process with technical comments and citizen participation, is preparing now and finalizing an information sheet that I think will be very helpful for the Commission and for other organizations as they think about the comments to submit to the agencies on this particular matter. I know this is very important for you because it's your future, and long after anybody else is gone, you'll be here. So, thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity. I don't know if there's any time left, but if
no, you did fine. And on the time, I'm just trying to remember back to 2015 when this thing first surfaced, if you will.
Right.
And there were, I think, 4 options. And each option had a monetary value, as I recall.
Yes.
And we, of course, sent a letter opting for a more extensive cleanup, a
Yes.
covered ditch
Yes.
rather than an open ditch.
Yes.
And of course, I think that must have fallen on deaf ears, because it looks like to me they opted for the cheapest, or next to the cheapest way to do this.
Right.
This is in my district. I tried to give it to Commissioner Booker, but he wouldn't take it. He said I could keep it. But I just, you know, we're going to weigh in with another letter to the EPA, and I mean, what do we? Is it?
I think I think council can be more accurate on the exact nature of the legal component of that, but the county and I think the city has also weighed in and said, no, we don't want a minimalist approach, particularly in terms of reuse. So site reuse and how the local city or county plans for the disposition of this property in the future is not just a consideration, it's a determining factor that EPA has to take into account. So I will admit, when I saw that, I was surprised. And the reason is that I've seen situations at other Superfund sites where the city actively designated a piece of property, waterfront property, from commercial use to recreational use in order to provide the citizens what they had asked for, which was access to their river. They said, we need another access point. This particular property, which is where contamination was flowing through from a slightly upland site source, is now commercial. It's got a parking lot, and they've got an office building over here, and they had a light manufacturing over there. They redesignated it as recreational use. The city did that, and EPA had no other recourse but to change their cleanup method. So, and that happened. I can give you the citation for that situation. I'll make sure that you've got that in writing.
So you're saying that if the city zoned it differently, than what it currently is, it will force EPA's hand on how they determine the cleanup method?
Based on what I have seen at other locations, yes. That's a
At what point do they have to do that? Is it too late to do that? Or-
Well, the 21st of August, I think, that's the drop dead day. And
the 21st of August is the deadline for comments, and the deadline for comments was extended in response to input from everybody. So that's one of the important points. I don't know at what point the city's action becomes moot. I do not know that. So there's another point in the that I had highlighted here, and that is that the consent decree does not maintain liability throughout and in the future. So that's why I said legal counsel needs to take a close look at how the consent decree treats the liability of Hercules. At Superfund sites, as well as other similar cleanup sites, whether it's done under Superfund or the military cleanup or industrial cleanup under Resource Conservation and Recovery Act, someone is responsible in the future. If there's a military site and you find another hand grenade 10 years down the road, they still come and get it. They still have to come and get it. So the situation here would be, is Hercules responsible for the contamination as waste discharged from their facility here and now and in the future?
Well, if it's okay with the rest of the commissioners, I would ask, Doctor, if you would get with our staff and help us to draft some sort of document to send to the EPA. I'll get with Mayor Harvey and make sure that the city is aware. We can't make them do anything, but I think they will. But, yeah.
What are we replying to?
Do what?
I say, what are we going to draft a letter about? He's up here, there's been a interim record of decision, okay?
Yep.
And he's given us his take on this record of decision between the EPA and I guess the Hercules or whoever. I think I'd like to hear from the EPA if we can get somebody here before we go drafting letters, because the points he's brought up, EPA may have some sound explanation to some of these points.
Well, it could be in our letter. Maybe an audience with the EPA might be in order. But we're looking at a deadline here of August 21st.
I don't care about being a part of a letter right now. I'd like to hear from the EPA.
Well, what are the wishes of the commission?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with both of you all. That was a nice,
I certainly don't have any.
political answer, right?
Yeah.
But I like to know.
Well, I appreciate what the gentleman has to say, but
yeah.
that's his point of view.
Right.
And,
But I definitely would
I'm
like
not-
to hear from the
I'm
EPA.
Well,
I'm not for firing off a letter to
I'm
the
not-
EPA until we study, you know.
Yeah, I'm not basing what I'm suggesting on his comments, although I think they're spot on. I'm basing it on what we saw in 2015 of 4 options and the EPA
Yeah, but you're talking about
choosing.
a letter. What do you want to do a letter about? Could
we
you
don't-
write those things down?
What?
So-
Yeah, I've got them
for the
somewhere.
board to tell us. I mean, so
Sure.
we have an idea what you're talking about writing a letter. I mean, we're talking about, let's just do a letter.
No,
About what? Concerning what?
Concerning what level of cleanup they're proposing to do on this site. There were 4 options. It went from somewhere between
I
$1.7
understand.
and $9 million.
I understand that. I know what, I've read this. I read this when it came out. I read these when I get them in the mail. And I read these. And I'm highly interested in it. But there again, it may be fair to say that Glynn Environmental Coalition will never be happy with what the government enters into with someone. You know, they may never be happy. So I can appreciate coming up here and voicing that to us, okay? But when the EPA, and I know I'm no fan of some of the heavy-handed tactics of the EPA, and I don't mind saying that, you know, but when they enter into a consent decree, and I've seen some on some other sites that I worked on, they were pretty substantial agreements about what the party, if you want to call it the offending party, had to do. And agreements that over time and millions of dollars, I can't help but think or believe that, you know, they want these places cleaned up. And, you know, so, but I'm not sure what we can write them a letter, just say, well, we've read the thing from GEC and we think more should be done? Or is there?
Mr. Chairman, can we get the staff to set up a meeting with EPA? Because I agree with Commissioner Browning, but I do think that at some point we need to stand together and send them a letter about how we feel about this. But I don't know how I completely feel about it because I may not have all the information. And I think that's what Commissioner Browning is saying.
Mr. Chairman?
I certainly want to, I just want to be on record prior to this comment period closing on August 21st, that based on what we requested in 2015 and what was done, we don't feel like is acceptable. And I'll never forget the comment. We're going to come back every year and catch a few fish and make sure that if you eat those fish, you don't glow in the dark. I mean, it just gives me reasons for pause here. But look, if we can set up a meeting with the EPA and
I would suggest we do it ASAP because time is of the essence.
I mean, this is a significant piece of real estate here.
Yeah, in the other, I guess you call it operable areas.
Yes, operable units are what EPA
Right.
refers to.
That's what I want to talk with them about as well. It's not just this piece, but the entire
Right,
piece.
because it's hundreds of acres.
Right, and I know the community near there, which is where I grew up, a few blocks away from this, don't really know about this. We hear every now and then about it, and but in detail, we do not know about this. So I've been working toward that. We created an Environmental Justice Advisory Board that's working on in the neighborhood from people from the neighborhood, and we do need to have them here to answer some questions because they are the ones who are going to be responsible to make sure this happens right. Even though Hercules, I guess, Ashland would be responsible for paying for it, making sure it happens on their side, but we need them as the ones who protect us. We need to talk to them directly, I believe.
Mr. Chairman, if I might add just one other little thing to everyone's point. A comment letter is also the opportunity to let the agencies know what is good about this consent decree that you support, that you do not want it weakened, you do not want it changed. So when the definition of the site includes, you know, all of the identified places and also says those other places where we may find waste, you want that in there. There are some very strong provisions in this consent decree. You want them in there. And the letter is the opportunity to say, we want the strong features in there. And I would not be surprised if counsel for the commission finds a couple of ambiguous places that you want clarified. That's what the letter does. It also is a chance for you to re-articulate positions or statements that you've made before. So, thank you.
Well, we can get a meeting, it wouldn't hurt to have a meeting.
Alan, can we do that? Yes, sir. Can we get somebody with EPA here and maybe get this thing, something happen before August 21st? Everybody okay with that?
Yeah, because I'd definitely like to ask about the wildlife monitoring, because when 3 Mile Island dumped a bunch of radioactivity in the Susquehanna River, they had fish people going around for years checking fish for radiation levels. So I would think we need to check something. You know, if all these are in the water, all these fish.
totality of the cleanup is not really depicted clearly to the community.
I'm not
What you
sure it
just
is
said
cleaned up.
about making sure that information is still in there is crucial to the totality of the cleanup. And we need to keep that in there, but there are other things probably we might need to look at as well.
Well, maybe we can make that a joint EPA meeting with the city.
Sounds good.
You know,
You
do
can
that.
get with, yeah,
Get the
that would
city
be
in.
excellent.
I think we need to,
Yeah, because it's that important.
yep, I agree. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you,
Appreciate it
members of the
very much.
commission.
Appreciate your information, too. All right, Ms. Miller. Define
Alan,
benefit analysis
Who
presentation.
district is in, please?
You got 4 minutes.
Yes, sir. I believe I can do it.
I believe you can
I
too.
even have my handouts for y'all.
Wow.
So you don't have a PowerPoint?
Actually, I do.
No.
I would not want
I
to
shouldn't have
disappoint you. So, my name is Tanya Miller. I'm the CFO here for the county and the Director of Administrative Services. And we are going to go over our pension plan options. I gave you handouts so you could take notes on the pages if you would like. But if you would please stay with me, that would be awesome as well. So the history of this is that commissioners requested that we explore different options for our pension plan for our employees. Staff issued an RFP for professional services, and Nyhart Actuary and Employee Benefits was awarded a contract in August of 2017. And then the commissioners heard presentations from Nyhart both on January 16th of this year and May 15th of this year. So the options that they presented were to close the plan to new entrants, and new hires would receive 6% of their pay into a defined contribution plan, or close the plan and freeze it for those who are not fully vested. And then that is one option, to just freeze it for those not fully vested, and then nothing happens with those funds. It's just frozen at that rate. And then another option was for those who are not fully vested to have a choice to stay in that defined benefit plan, or have benefits rolled over to a defined contribution at 6% like the new hires would come in at, or to keep the current defined benefit plan. So the expenses to the county for each option are shown on the following slide. They're shown as a percentage of payroll. So this is what was presented on May 15th at the work session. But that morning, our actuary valuation was also presented, and it showed a different picture than what was presented at the work session. So instead of our current plan going out 20 years before the unfunded liability is met, it was more like this. It was 6 to 9 years. No, it was 7 to 9 years. And I know that each of you had questions after that presentation, and then had an opportunity to speak to Mr. Gene Kelly if you chose to. And we're able to ask a lot of questions and understand this more fully. And I will mention at this point, too, that our RFP for investment services has been out, and it's due today, I do believe, and Mr. Kelly will not be bidding on that. So it's also sort of, he has no financial gain for telling you guys what he has told you in his opinion of which type of plan we choose. So this is our projected liability. So the things that I've heard that are concerns are either the cost of the plan in the future or the liability in the future. So these are the different options that were presented, as well as the liability that goes with each one. But accrued liability does not equal an unfunded liability. So each time that we talk about that liability, this is the line of where our assets are. So that is the liability line on the top for the current plan, but where I've marked it in pink is where the plan would be funded. The unfunded liability would go away. So the blue line will actually match that red line at that point. And then over time, it will sort of hover around that red line. It'll go over and under that line. So,
Tanya, doesn't that depend greatly on the market returns at the time?
and the assumptions you put into creating that graph?
Absolutely.
So
It does.
Remind us exactly what those assumptions are.
Okay. So we'll go back to this slide. So the actuarial valuation showed at that moment in time that if things were to stay the same and the market were to continue as it had been, and we continued funding at the same level that we have been, which we have been funding at 9.8% per year, that if all those things were to stay the same, Mr. Kelly said, too, that he believes it would be sooner than 7 years, our unfunded liability would be paid off. And so he also had an opportunity to show you all over time how our plan has done with the market.
Right, but my question really is, what is that assumption, so everybody here knows what assumption you're plugging into this graph to come up with this rosy scenario? Isn't it 8.75%?
No, it's actually 7.75%. Yes.
Still, it's rather robust return. And look, the manager of the fund that we met with is just doing a glorious job. He really does marvelous work. But, you know, the concern that I would have, and others that I've spoken to, is that will that necessarily continue on in a straight line as you presented, such that we are fully funded after X number of years. You know, I mean, you have 3, 4, 5, 6 continued years of downturn. You know, the lines are going to start to diverge. And I'm not trying to be argumentative. I just want everybody to realize that that's the risk that's being taken. And, you know, while the assumption is the market's going to continue to cook along, I thought it was 8 points, but I'll say 7.75%. And we're putting in almost 10% of the salaries we're paying employees. At some point, we could face, you know, a significant shortfall. And that's my only concern. I'm not, you know, your graphs are wonderful and all that, but I think that is the essence of the problem we're discussing here today. You know,
Right.
we have very rosy assumptions and predictions, and you have done very well in the past with the plan, and we all hope it goes forward. But that's how a lot of other municipalities, counties, and states have gotten into a great deal of trouble with defined benefit plans. It's just because of that.
Absolutely. But I will also reiterate what Mr. Kelly said in some of the information sessions that we had, was that, you know, we've got a mixture of fixed equities as well as our stocks and things like that. And so he showed in those where those were already earning right at 6%. So the only part that we had to make up for was the other about 2% that we had to earn on the rest. But he also showed the makeup of that entire portfolio. And when he was showing that, he showed what you're looking at represents America. It represents what is in the American, just America as a whole. So when he was explaining that, he said, unless America fails, your plan will continue. And so then we have the smoothing bucket as well. I could go all into that, but we do have room built in to have some bumps along the way. But we also have that smoothing bucket. And we've had some really good years. And so anything over that, which we've had over that, is in that smoothing bucket, and it's smoothed over 5 years. So when we do hit a very bad year, like 2009 perhaps, we've got built up years in that smoothing bucket, and then those bad years start hitting, and those better years help smooth that out.
Tanya, explain what that smoothing bucket is in great years, how that works.
Okay.
Credit the debit.
Absolutely. So if this year we were to earn 9%, I think last year we earned right at 9%. I cannot remember exactly, though. So anything over that will go into the smoothing bucket. So those dollars are put aside, and that 9% is broken up into, say we had $100,000 extra. Well, $20,000 each year of the next 5 years will be into the smoothing bucket. And so the next year, say there was an $80,000 addition. Well, 1/5 of that would go in each year in the additional years. So then if we have 1 year that's $100,000 short, only $20,000 would hit that year, and they're all moving along in the smoothing bucket. And that's what actuaries do and pension plans do, so that you don't have these huge swings in the market like the market is doing. Ours is more of a smooth market value.
So basically, when we have a deficit, we have money in a savings per se to help us out to get through
It's just hedged.
a rough time.
Correct. And so hopefully within a few years, the market has turned back around and we're earning money again, so that if you had continued years of deficits, then there would be certainly a problem. But yes,
You're not moving money around, you're just averaging.
correct.
You're averaging
Over a
the
5-year
performance.
period.
You're averaging your performance over a period of years, and you keep moving it along. You're talking about Mr. Kelly said that, the investment portfolio represents America. Well, I think if you look at any top rate investment portfolio for any plan, you're going to find that it also represents America, in terms of where the money's invested, by the fund managers. I don't know if there's anything there that adds to or takes away from what we're considering. There's some well-managed funds or plans out there. That I think what you need to look at is on defined benefit. Well, actually, the market rate of returns. If you go look at the market rate of returns and see how your plan, you can take a period of time, you can go back 10 years, 15, say 10 years, if you want to look at the market, see what the market has done. If the market, just if it's produced a 6% return on average over the last 10 years, and your plan manager has earned you a 7 or 8 or 9% return, it's done pretty doggone good. But that's one way you can compare and see how well your fund is doing. To use a 7.75, I'm not sure. Is that what our fund has averaged?
Yes.
We have met that.
Or
Yes,
exceeded it.
yes.
Or exceeded it.
Yeah.
Our fund has done extremely well.
It has, and it's
Except for
also
the
because
years
of our
that we took the bump
restrictions.
Yeah.
during
on our
8 and
investments.
9 during
Right.
that time frame. But
Right.
we have recovered well.
We had some bad years, and that's where the smoothing comes out.
Right.
Okay, you average that out. The only thing I have about one of the biggest concerns that I have with our fund is that Mr. Kelly, who has done an excellent job, I'll be the first to say that.
Don't have him
Done an
mounted.
excellent job. Mr. Kelly's not going to be with us forever, and
Well, you just heard what you said. He's not going to bid on the new one. He's not going to bid on the new
He's not going to
contract.
bid, but he has offered to help us make sure that our next investment manager is the type of investment manager that he has been and that we need moving forward.
He's going to be the watchful eye over our
The
pension plan.
thing that he's brought to the table is discipline and consistency.
Yeah.
And he doesn't waver. And
well, you can't.
if you
he's
stay
got a
that
great-
course, then
he's got a great record.
Yes, sir.
A great record. And
He does.
Not just investing, but actually what he charges.
Did you say why he's
Okay.
not? Is he retiring?
He did not know that he could give us a 5-year commitment, which it is 1-year commitments at a time for an extension for 5 years. But he did say he would like the opportunity, if we were interested, to help us make sure, because we certainly don't have his kind of knowledge on our staff. But as you will also recall, he's very passionate about the employees and what's best for the employees. And so I think too, I don't know, but part of what he wanted to make sure you knew was that there's no financial gain for him having shared with you what he did share with you all.
He has a big part of his life invested in Glynn County's
He
pension
does.
fund since 1989.
He does, and he's
So-
a citizen here, and he's very passionate about it, as some of you saw.
So he's not retiring.
I do not believe he is retiring.
And he lives here, so I just don't understand why we can't still.
I
work
don't
out
understand
something
either.
to work with him on this.
I don't either, but I'm sure he would appreciate a call from each or every one of you. To
Yeah, I would really suggest, Mr. Chairman, that we look at trying to work with him, because his record and the way he has gone about this.
Well,
It's
you
been
bring up,
dis-
you
it's
bring
been-
up an excellent point, Commissioner Booker. But one of the things that we have to decide is that the direction that we're gonna go, or are we going to change directions, which some of my fellow commissioners desire to do?
You're not really changing directions per se. What you're doing is changing the structure. You're basically going to a contribution style plan for new employees, Commissioner Strickland. You still invest the money. It still gets invested like a 401k. It's not like we just get the money and throw it into a pot on Alan's desk or anything. So the investment portfolio doesn't change, except for the fact that instead of a defined benefits program, you're also using, a contribution style plan for new employees. So the program moves forward, and of course, the better that program does, the more retirement funds that employees can accrue. So one thing I didn't see here, the unfunded liabilities, you have the accrued liability, but we had a section on unfunded liabilities, and it was 202 million under the current system, and it was a lot less.
that's the
Can you refresh my memory on that?
yes, sir. That is the accrued liability. So if you look at the chart that's up right now, you see the accrued liability reaches just over 200 million by 2047. And in the presentation that we received on May 15th, that shows that the accrued liability is expected to reach 204 million under the current plan, 118 million under a closed plan to new hires, 106 million under the close the plan to new hires and freeze benefits or the not fully vested employees. The third option is 102 million if you allow that amount to be rolled into a DC plan for the not fully invested employees, or then the fourth option, well, it doesn't give an accrued liability, but it's to allow them to make a choice. We either stay or we go if they're not fully vested.
What were those two numbers again, the first two?
So 204 million or 118 million. So those are accrued liabilities, which I was pointing out in the slide that I showed. That's not an unfunded liability, because if the world stayed as it was at that moment in time, we'd have that liability paid off in sooner than 7 years. So the assets would match the liabilities regardless.
The 204.
The 204, yes, sir.
What happens with the defined contribution liability?
It didn't really talk about what happens with the liability on a defined contribution, but I do believe if we kept the rate at 9.8%, and this is just me talking, Mr. Hours is welcome to chime in if he would like, I do believe that that would stay the same. I mean, I think if we're talking about the unfunded liability, regardless, if we keep our 9.8% contribution rate going and things stay as they should, I think that would be the case on any of the options.
It would also be funded, totally funded at some point.
I believe that, yes, sir. I do.
Keep in mind, your 9.8% is going to keep growing incrementally as you have out pay raises, et cetera. So it becomes a bigger and bigger part of our budget each year as pay raises go through and people make more money.
Well, actually,
This is not money coming out of their paychecks. This is money that we give them a pay raise that we start contributing more, the 9.8%. Now, the number I saw on the percentage we were funded looked like we're somewhere between 84 and 86%, depending on which numbers you look at, or 89%, depending on which numbers you look at. And it was proposed that we go to like 10.1 or 10.4% of their gross salaries to get that up to the 90% level. So, you know, we have to look at every angle of this thing. The percentage of funding that we have covered at this point is somewhere less than, it's south of 90%. I'm not sure the exact number because it depends on which group of numbers we get here. But initially, it looks to me like we're not over 90%. We're not at 90%. We're somewhere between 84 and 89% funded. So are we going to then increase the amount from the 9.8 to the 10.4 to catch the percentage of where we're funded at? Or are we going to leave it as is? And I'm sorry, I mean, this actuarial valuation, now all of a sudden 7 years, it's all going to drop off. I'm like Commissioner Murphy. I have serious reservations that's going to happen because I haven't seen it happen with most plans. And that's nothing against the people that are investment people or anything else. It's just that most of these defined benefits programs continue to increase in costs, and those unfunded liabilities. I mean, you're looking at a $100 million difference in the unfunded liability versus, between the two different plans. It's a lot of money. So, there are a lot of things that happen in this world, and the United States doesn't have to fail for us to end up on the back end of this thing. I give you a 2008 housing crash, and we went from averaging years of 12, 14% returns to negative 6%. Now we've averaged out since 1989. What was that average percentage that we averaged out at?
I don't recall. Sorry.
6%, something along those lines, is what we averaged out.
No, it was like 8.75.
I don't recall. It's in the last
I don't think so, Rich. I think
report
it's
from
6 point
Mr.
some
Kelly.
percent since 1989. So even with a smoothing bucket, the smoothing bucket helps you not take big hits, but your overall return, it is affected. So like I said, you go from 12 and 14% returns in some years to negative numbers in others, and it smooths out to around 6 to 7%. We're still on the hairy edge with this projection of this thing over the next 20, 30 years working out properly, so we end up with these numbers. That's my concern.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, so the 9.8% is our current contribution rate. It is not our required contribution rate. Our required contribution rate this past year was 7.7 or 7.8%.
7.8.
But the pension committee chose to recommend the 9.8% so we can get closer to funding that liability. So after the 7 years, that's the number that drops below 6%. So if you're looking at just the cost of payroll, that's what this graph is showing, the cost of payroll, or the cost of the plan as a percentage of payroll. And again, I understand it's just a moment in time, but I did want to make sure that that was clear. That is the lowest cost after 7 years over time.
Well, Commissioners, what's your staff some direction? You got any more questions?
Well, I mean,
They got a crystal ball?
sitting on the pension committee under Commissioner Strickland for a few years there. In hearing the reports from Mr. Kelly, I'm hopeful about staying where we are. I just I believe that the market is not going to tank to the point where this will be a bad decision. I think if we stay the line in the way that it's structured, that we'll do just fine. I'm not an investment banker. Oh, yeah. No, I just was on the pension committee with Richard. But I think Mr. Kelly it is someone who cares about our employees, and as though he's doing this for someone in his family. And I think he helped us to structure this so that we will do as well as we've been doing. I mean, we've come through some rough times. So that's kind of where I'm at.
You know, I tend to agree with you, and I think this whole process has been healthy. I guess my question, Chairman, is, you know, if we give it our blessing, what are we giving our blessing for? Ad infinitum, or should we have a healthy review like this every couple of years to debate this, to see where we are, recognizing that even if we do continue with the defined benefit plan now, you know, a couple of years, we may just go, I can't believe those guys, since we're no longer here in a few years, I can't believe those guys did that. You know, we need to go to defined contribution, but I think it's been a healthy process.
Oh, I agree. I agree.
And
Absolutely.
the returns have been fabulous. Mr. Kelly done a great job, but as he won't be associated with it anymore, you know, review at some future planned date would make a lot of sense.
I think that's an excellent suggestion, Mr. Commissioner Murphy, that it should be reviewed every couple of years. And I agree with Commissioner Booker. And you know, as far as hiring and retention for Glynn County, it just does so much for Glynn County as far as being able to retain and hire the kind of employees that we want and need. So I'm for staying with the plan we're on.
Commissioner Browning, you look like you want to say something.
No, I
Don't?
I'm just listening today.
Okay. Bob, anybody? JR?
No, the only thing I'd say about it with the hiring, I brought this point up before, millennials are not interested in defined benefits programs that aren't portable. And we're going to start seeing more and more of that. Most of your young people want portable plans. The proposal that we came up with from the committee, or I came up with, is basically to offer that portability to people that come to work here, and they're here for X number of years. They get to take all of their money, including what the county's given them, on somewhere else. It will reduce our costs annually because it's a contribution style plan where we would be matching their funds, and we'll see how serious they are about it. But you know, gentlemen, I mean, I hate to use this term, but you know, I mean, yeah, we can can down the road, and a couple of years from now look at it again. A couple of years after that, we can look at it again, and people will keep looking at this thing. But I'm telling you, it's just, I think we're at a point where these graphs look real nice, and I'll be very surprised if 30 years from now this graph looks like what I'm being told it's going to look like. It hasn't been anyplace else. And you know, I brought it up. 20% of Fortune 500 companies, that's all you got that are in defined benefits programs, because the costs have gotten so expensive. They've dumped it. A lot of your governments, we all know the issues people have had in different governments around the country, cities and counties, with these defined benefits programs. They just keep expanding over time. So, I mean, I made it clear. I mean, that's fine. If you guys want to, you know, look at this later on, that's okay. But I think we're making a mistake not to take this head on right now.
And I agree with you to some point, Commissioner Stanball, but I think in other cities, whether it be Jacksonville or Detroit or wherever that city is, I think because the plans have been mismanaged for one thing, and they have used those pension plans as their slush funds also.
Other stuff.
And I think that's what's caused a great majority of these city and county plans to fail over the years. So, anyway.
Well, I think you have a consensus to stay the course for now, and let's look at it. Look at it in a couple of years and see where we go. Everybody okay with that?
Yes, sir.
All right, we are going to take a break in order to get some of our high-tech wizardry cranked up here so that we can address item number 3. So. Item number 3 is a presentation from Host Compliance regarding short-term rentals, and I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Murphy.
Okay, Mr. Harrington of Host Compliance is on the phone, and will be broadcast throughout the room. But I wanted to just give a little lead-in to how we got here. We're talking about management of short-term rentals, primarily but not exclusively on St. Simon's Island. It's a very large market there. It occurs in residential neighborhoods and can be a disruptive situation with an increased number of cars, noise, trash. How am I doing, man?
You're good. You're
Okay.
good. Just checking.
Especially when you put a large number of rental individuals in smaller units. This is not the first rodeo for Host Compliance, but it's the first time that we've really sort of faced this in a serious fashion here. But other communities around us, such as Fernandina Beach and St. Augustine, have already embarked on efforts to help control the situation, and they've gone from something as draconian as regulating the total number of units in a community that can be allowed to do this. They put a cap on the number, all the way to creating a registry to understand who's doing this, who's responsible, who's the responsible party, and this would allow code enforcement to more effectively intervene. So really the problems we're dealing with here include rentals in residential neighborhoods where noise, trash, and parking in the neighborhoods can be problematic. Clearly, other proprietors of small hotels, large hotels, and other rental properties have faced these issues effectively, and this is not an effort to put an unburdened amount of taxes on anybody, but it goes without saying that we have evidence that some who are in the rental business have not been paying their accommodation tax, and this gives rise to an unequal playing field. The last point I would make is that safety is an issue in these unregulated units, and that we really don't have any control presently over the number of persons living in a rental property. We have no inspections of the number of exits, whether that's safe for the mass of people renting, and assuring that fire alarms are functional, amongst other issues. Now I recognize there's been some pushback, and there was an editorial that a month ago in the paper, and I'll just read the last part of the last paragraph that said, Mr. Murphy plans on stifling the free market in favor of government regulations that will probably inhibit local prosperity. He says, watch out, gun owners, you may be next. I'm here to tell you, I have no interest in your guns. With that introduction, Mr. Harrington, you're on.
Thank you very much. And just first, an audio check. Can everybody hear me in the room okay?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
All good? Okay, great. So very much interested in an interactive presentation today. Happy to address any questions as we go through this. And it's my pleasure today. Again, as introduced, my name is Paul Hetherington, and I am one of the co-founders of Host Compliance. Host Compliance is an organization based out of San Francisco, and we've been working as the global experts in short-term vacation rental compliance management for a period of about 2 years now. As mentioned, it's not our first rodeo, and we have over 120 customers across the U.S. and Canada, and have been providing these services for some time now. Where the company came from, just to give you a brief background there, is it was actually started by the gentleman on the left side of the screen, Ulrich Binzer. And Ulrich came across the problem in his hometown of Tiburon, California, and found out that the large number of short-term vacation rentals there was potentially going to be banned. He felt that a ban wasn't necessarily the best solution for that. So what he actually did is looked for a solution of helping local governments have the information that they need to appropriately regulate short-term vacation rentals, and that means starting with the list of the short-term vacation rentals in their area. If you don't have the experience behind this, the growth of the Airbnb-style short-term vacation rentals has become problematic because what happens there is not to villainize Airbnb, but they won't actually share the list of who's doing the renting of the short-term vacation rentals in your area. And now the landscape has changed. There's over 50 Airbnb-style platforms out there. So for local government, which is where my background is, it's a real problem. It isn't about taking people's guns away. It's about providing the information to local government so that they can put a balanced set of regulations in place, making sure that they don't have to ban this, and that they can go the direction of fair and balanced regulations so that the community and the community members benefit all the way through. Now, jumping just quickly to a little bit of background on the challenge itself. This is a problem that has been accelerating and increasing across the nation. You'll see that actually for 2016 and 2017, the numbers have increased even greater than this. And I realized here I'm working off a slide deck created quite some time ago for your organization. But if there's any question as to whether Airbnb short-term vacation rentals, whether the issue is going to go away, it just clearly isn't. The proliferation of the number of platforms from about 10 or 15 2 years ago to over 100 now is evidence of that, which makes it harder and harder for cities and counties to stay on top of this issue. Looking at a snapshot in time, the number of short-term vacation rentals in the county, is significant there. You're looking at about 1,400 listings, that's advertisements, and around 800 and so unique short-term vacation rentals. Now, keep in mind that over the span of a period of time, this number does tend to go up, and this was taken looking at the whole county. If you look at the unincorporated area of the county, there the numbers are significant and fairly equal there. The question is, okay, what is there that you can do about this? What is the sort of best practice approach? And that's where host compliance comes in. What we've done is we've created a set of modules that are online software that you basically utilize as software as a service. And these modules are designed specifically to make it as easy as possible for the county provide fair and balanced regulation, to this challenging issue. And I'm going to take a minute here and just sort of explain each of the 5 modules and how they apply specifically, to your situation there. First off, I'm actually going to start on the second item here, the address identification, and I like to do that because that's the platform module that you need to have to add any of the other modules. What that is the list of the short-term vacation rentals in your area, and host compliance has gone out and pulled in information from the top 50 short-term vacation rental sites out there. We combine that with information that we get from real estate sites and from other information sources on the internet, and we match it up with your assessor data. And so we provide you all of that combined with the address of the physical property and, of course, the address of the owner. What we don't do, though, is sort of send you a list of that and say, enjoy yourself and have you work through that list. Our service is very much focused on making sure that we actually get to the solution for you. So what we do is we set up a website, an internal website for county staff that you can access and get to this information, whenever you need it. We update the information on that website, the lists of the short-term vacation rentals in your area on a weekly basis. This is a very dynamic problem and changes very quickly, so you need fresh and updated information. And with those, the information that you receive there, which you can download from the site at any time and interface that into your GIS or financial systems, We also provide a full-length running screenshot. So if you're looking to, sort of police this issue, capturing the actual listings on an ongoing basis is very, very important, to the county. And so what we're doing is we're taking a screenshot of the listing or of the multiple listings for that property. We're doing that for you on a weekly basis, and we're capturing that information in with the system. All of that I've just mentioned is included in our address identification module. And what that does is give you the access to the list of the short-term vacation rentals, and we partner that with the compliance monitoring module, which gives you the capability in working with us to have host compliance provide a set of templates and work with you to craft the letters that we send out on your behalf. So in combining the address identification and the compliance monitoring modules, we then have the capability to to reach out and let these individuals know that it's important for them to get registered and to make sure that they're following all of the regulations and the requirements. Going up to the mobile-enabled permitting and registration module at the top there, what that is then providing is the ability for these short-term vacation rentals to very, very easily and quickly register for any permitting that you might be considering or have, and also register for remitting appropriate taxes. And in terms of the rental activity monitoring module, the one second from the bottom there, that then gives you the ability to determine the number of rentals that are occurring and the amount of sort of variance between what should be paid from a tax perspective and what is getting paid. And so we partner with the county and do a number of activities and services that work off of that delta between what's being paid and what should be paid. We reach out on your behalf, and under the letterhead of the county, we provide you the templates and do the reaching out for you there, and also provide an audit service, an online audit service that gives you the capability for your staff to be as efficient as possible at securing any outstanding taxes. And then lastly, the bottom module is a dedicated hotline. And what that gives the county the ability to do is make it very clear to the short-term vacation rental hosts in the area that there is in fact a watch going on this in 24 hours a day. And if you have a problem, if your neighbor is maybe affecting you with ill-parked cars, or there's a party at 2 o'clock in the morning, you have the capability to dial this hotline, and then go ahead and our service kind of takes over from there, working off of your regulations and make sure that the regulations are upheld there. So at the highest level, those are the 5 modules that host compliance has available to the county, and I know there's still some discussion and details on specifically the modules that are under consideration. But before I go on, I wanted to see if there were any questions or comments to what I've put forward so far.
Yeah, I've got one. So, yeah, it's Peter Murphy again. Listen, so it is an impressive list of services you have. But the one thing that strikes me is you must have a lot of experience with other municipalities, counties, in regards to their ordinances and how they've established the ground rules for regulating these situations. And I'm not talking about being onerous. I'm just talking about making sure our laws are written such that our code enforcement and our police officers don't have any difficulty at all dealing with safety issue, noise issue, trash issue, numbers of cars in neighborhood issues. Is this a service that would be provided by host compliance?
Yeah, thanks for the question, Peter. I did kind of jump through to our list of post ordinance services, just giving you an indication there that there is a really good alternative to gain strong compliance once you have the appropriate regulations in place. What you're seeing on the screen now is a combination of services, and on the left side of the screen are the pre-ordinance services. And these are services provided by Host Compliance. As you mentioned, we've been doing this for quite some time. I've had the good fortune myself to talk to over 650 cities and counties on this subject. And what we have amassed over time is we've seen some great ordinances, and we've seen some, well, let's just call them creative ordinances with some real challenges in them. So we've amassed a set of services that we call pre-ordinance services, and actually a good chunk of those services are actually provided for free in assistance to the county to help you move through the process of getting the appropriate regulations and ordinances in place. And so just to touch on those real quickly, we've built something called an online ordinance assistance tool. And what that does is help you work from the aspects of the short-term vacation rental regulation that are important to you with a set of questions that you put to your staff and to council, and helps you work through the associated information and the questions related to building the right ordinance. We also have a series of webinars that are focused around staff and council getting your head around this issue. With the webinars, we actually have focused on kind of the first one being a 101 of short-term vacation rentals, just to help you make sure you get the vernacular and the challenges of the issue clearly understood across all stakeholders. We then go into a dedicated webinar specifically to the purpose and the process of creating an ordinance and the important aspects to consider there. The follow-up webinar to that is actually, excuse me, is actually a webinar specifically focused on compliance and how to gain and achieve the highest level of compliance. We then have a series of webinars that are focused on our customers, and basically, as you mentioned, we've done this before with a large number of organizations out there. And so what counties and what cities have had real success with this and what worked for them? So, and again, that series of webinars is available, available for viewing. It's basically a collection of the information that we've been able to put together and amass best practice over time. Related to that, in a more condensed form, we've created a white paper specific to creating an ordinance that is enforceable and will work for your community there. There is no one-size-fits-all ordinance, and that's why what we do is we focus on a number of the aspects of the challenges that you might see and help you identify if those are present in your community and allow you to then select the appropriate regulations associated to those. That white paper is very well regarded and is effectively a sort of a do's and don'ts. There are a few aspects that you just don't want to leave out. And I won't bore you with the details today, but there are some things that just make short-term vacation rental regulation dramatically easier to be successful with, to be accepted, and also to gain great compliance. We, of course, are very happy to do peer introductions to cities in your area or across the country that have a similar scenario to what you're experiencing. We deal with a vast, number of coastal communities, and definitely have individuals that have gone down the road that you're going. When you do get to the point of an actual ordinance in draft format, we're more than happy to review that for you and to provide our input and let you know if there are any areas missing or if there are any particular aspects to it that are gating in terms of making it truly enforceable or a success from an implementation standpoint. And what we also do for about 10% of our customers out there is we provide consulting and facilitation services. So if the information mentioned so far isn't enough to kind of get you across the chasm from maybe some challenges that you might be having, maybe some feedback from the community, perhaps there's aspects of the ordinance that you're finding particularly challenging to get your head around. About 10% of our customers do take advantage of our consulting and facilitation services. They are very much provided on a cost basis. This really isn't an aspect of our business where it's a profit center. We're really just doing that to help you get into an ordinance that is lasting and provides a good foundation for success going forward. Of course, with the hope that you will find the rest of our services that we talked about before. You see on the post-ordinance side, and again, this slide is the detailed version of that. That you will find them as a very good solution to a long-term relationship from a facilitating compliance success and success for the community long-term.
Let me ask you another question. Recognizing that you're never going to make everybody happy, that's certainly been my experience.
Yeah.
Been a commissioner for a year and a half now, but what are out of the end users, the persons that might have 1 unit or 2 unit or 10 units that they're renting out? How do they, in your experience, how have they responded to the implementation of a regulated situation in their communities?
Yeah, and it is very interesting because done incorrectly, this can actually become a very much a hot button issue, and without sort of the appropriate forethought into what the community response is going to be. For example, if you were to just throw open the gates and do a community input meeting, we have seen that not particularly successful in other geographies across the U.S. But when you provide them the background of the benefit and the value to those unit holders, it actually can be very successful. There is a certain amount of stability and actual, believe it or not, real estate value that has the capability to increase when the question of is this a legally rentable short-term vacation rental, is it regulated, has been dealt with. If it's a question over the community and the regulations aren't in place, there isn't a fair and balanced set of regulations, then there's always the question that at some point it could become a hot button issue and potentially aspects of the community or areas of the community it could be banned. And that actually hurts not only short-term vacation rentals, but also the potential long-term value of these units. In the vast majority of communities where regulations have gone in place and they've been fair and balanced, the actual unit holders have eventually been in favor of that approach themselves, especially because when you take an approach and you put an appropriate permit fee in, that in comparison to the revenue opportunities of these units is usually just a small fraction of their operating costs. And usually the best practice utilized for that, for a permit fee, is looking at one median night's rent. So if you look at one night's rent, often many of these owners will be renting these units 100 or more nights per year, and so it's a very small permit allocation. But what that does is provide the appropriate amount of resources not only for our services here at Host Compliance, but also for additional services at the county from a compliance perspective. So when everything is appropriately regulated and the revenue recovery from any taxes and permits are put in place, the vast majority of our customers not only have happy community, happy unit owners, but also the program typically recovers in the neighborhood of 5 to 10 times of the revenue of the cost of the program. So it does tend to be a very rare situation for myself. I've been providing software solutions like this into local government for the better part of my career, and this is one of those rare situations where I can say, I have the solution to the challenge that you're facing and that is bubbling up in the community, but I also can provide an opportunity to pay for it and have it utilized and generate revenue as well.
In the southeast, who are
Some of your clients?
clients in the southeast?
Some of the other commissioners are asking, do you have any other clients in our region, the southeast U.S. region, Florida, Georgia coast, South Carolina?
Yeah, absolutely. And so we have in Florida. Florida was one of the areas that we started branching out from specifically after California. This business started in California, and it was where we kind of got our first traction. We really have only just started kind of coming up the East Coast. In Florida, we have a number of recognizable cities and counties. Fort Lauderdale, we actually have 15 customers in Florida. Fort Lauderdale is an example there. Number of counties, and I think probably the closest one to you in terms of up the East Coast there is St. Johns County. We have another county called Walton County that has over 15,000 short-term vacation rentals. A little bit closer to home, but maybe some smaller examples is Sandy Springs is a customer, as is Hall County. Those two being our first two customers in Georgia. I'm happy to actually send over a list of all of our customers in the area there, as well as some comments and testimonials from them as to our capability.
Cost.
The question has been raised by Commissioner Strickland as to the cost. You had suggested that with a permitting fee and or enhanced tax revenues, it might pay for itself. I'm not sure we're necessarily looking at making this a cost center, but rather a safety and certainty of quality center. But what about startup costs and ultimate balance of payments?
Sure. And just to give you a quick indication, and I will do the math for you, but just to give you a quick indication of the cost per module. So this is the way the cost is calculated is based on the number of short-term vacation rental listings in your area. So it's directly associated to the amount of impact on the community positively and the amount of revenue that can be generated there. And so if you were to look at all of the modules there, it's approximately $70 per short-term vacation rental per year. Now, keeping in mind that most permits are going to be somewhere in the range of $200 to $250, and then of course your tax recovery on top of that. Many of our customers are recovering in the neighborhood of $500 sort of per short-term vacation rental. So that kind of gives you an indication per module of how this works out at a per unit basis. And just to do the math for you, based on now we haven't actually done an updated count there recently. We would need to do that. How our pricing works is that we do a short-term vacation rental survey in your area within a month of the contract going live, and so that will give us the exact number of units. But this is just an indication of when we last did it, that the cost would be per module there. So just to give you kind of an indication of magnitude there. Now again, the math does bear out pretty strongly that that there is a real good indication that this will cover its cost a few times over.
So let me ask you this question: if you looked at all the private homes that are being rented out in a place like Glynn County in short-term rental programs, so some of them are done by individuals, and some are done by larger groups, such as real estate companies with
property managers.
Absolutely. How do you determine who would fit into your into our needs in your program? Everybody or just some?
Well, so the way the best practice and the way that this comes at is it doesn't really matter who's renting it out. They should be permitted and registered with the county, and they should be paying appropriate taxes. And so the information that we're going to be providing you is looking at this from a top-down perspective as to any of the advertisements that we're seeing on any of the short-term vacation rental sites out there. So Airbnb, VRBO, HomeAway, Tripping, Flipkey, we're tracking 50 of them. And so you're going to know at the sort of the grassroots or the activity level what's happening. Now, the best practice from the property management perspective, and that is one of the trends that's definitely happening out there, is that some property managers have their own websites. Some of them are actually listing their short-term vacation rentals on Airbnb and the other sites out there, just because if you can't beat them, join them. But those ones should be registered with the county as well, and also they should be moving to the new best practice, which is registering each individual unit. historically, counties had seen that a property manager would register and just tell you that they had 300 units. And, that just isn't something that flies anymore in terms of the capability to track the activity, making sure that there's appropriate tax compliance, and dealing with any issues that pop up in the middle of the night, and who's going to be responsible for, coming on site and making sure that any challenges are dealt with. One of the aspects of regulation that's available and that is definitely the best practice, Fort Lauderdale, as I mentioned, does it, and the vast majority of our customers, is that this is a privilege, and if you're going to be able to rent your unit out and potentially impact your neighborhood and impact your neighbors, that you need to commit that you yourself as the host or you're going to allocate somebody on your behalf. If there's a complaint at 2 o'clock in the morning, you need to be on site within, the time ranges between 30 and 60 minutes. And when you look at our hotline functionality that we provide, that'll come up in just a minute here, what we do is, having worked with you to help establish the construction of the ordinance with that requirement, when somebody complains, what we do is we give them the capability to collect information specifically about what's the challenge is, meaning the ability to upload videos and audio related to that. And we actually reach out specifically to the host or the designated representative of the host automatically in the middle of the night. And what we also do is we follow up back with the complainant in that time frame, whether it's 30 or 60 minutes, to confirm that individual did actually come on site. So as you can see, a number of layers of best practice that have been engineered in here that have been proven across a number of, over 100 other communities to just work really well together and work in a combined nature. So I did delve a little bit from your original question, but in short, it doesn't really matter, who the owner and who the operator is. They should all be registered. They should all pay permits, and they should all, be capable to work by the same rules.
So the owner operator pays the fees. Is that correct?
Correct. No, it's up.
Who pays the fees? In other words, if you pointed out that it was about $70 if you went into all 5 of the modules, let's say. So that money would be, which works out to about, based on Commissioner Browning's calculations, about $67,000 a year. That would be paid by Glynn County?
Yeah, so you're our customer. The county is our customer, but the fees for the regulations, the permits themselves, are paid by the owner operator, and the fees that would typically be associated with the type of permits that we're talking about here will be usually more than that $70. In some cases, several times more. So you're our customer.
So for instance, based on that, what do you charge? What do they charge a local one of your clients? What do they charge as far as you say it's several times more?
You're talking about the permit fee?
The permit fee and everything.
What would be a typical permit fee in, say, St. Johns County?
Yeah, and I don't have off the top of my head St. Johns County, but the average permit fees we see across the U.S. Are between $200 and $250. Now, it does range a fair bit. On the low side, you'll see $100. On the high side, Fort Lauderdale is $350, and there are some in California that are significantly higher than that. But you're looking at usually around $200 to $250 for a permit.
Is that a one-time fee, or is that yearly, or how does
it's an annual fee?
That's annually?
Yeah. Yeah, and this is very much the best practice, across the U.S. It's very established. The vast majority of our customers have some level of permit.
So our fee would be $80,000, somewhere around there, based on 1,400.
Yeah.
67.
That's for the $70. They're
Right.
talking about the $100 would be more like,
Oh, yeah.
$100 would be $147,000.
That we will collect.
Correct.
For
You know,
the
offset the annual fee, but you could set it wherever you wanted to set it, really.
Yeah, it really just depends on whether you're looking at straight revenue recovery. From a software perspective, you may want to work into that some additional resources from a code enforcement perspective. And we can provide you some details and sort of best practice, and we can introduce you to some code enforcement directors that we've worked with and give you a real good indication as to how all that works. And then, of course, there's a revenue recovery on the tax side as well.
They only do this for short-term rentals?
I'm sorry.
They only do this for short-term rentals?
The question was asked by Commissioner Booker if you only do this for short-term rentals.
Yeah, it's interesting. That's the third time in the last week I've been asked if there was any interest in doing regular rentals, and currently we're focused just on short-term rentals.
Yeah.
Well, there's no tax, there's no benefit to the county for a long-term rental. I mean,
Right.
we don't pay that, so, I mean,
Any other questions by the commissioners?
No, all right now.
Manager? All right, well, listen, you've been great, Paul. Thank you so much. You answered all our questions very effectively. We really appreciate you taking the time to do that.
That's absolutely my pleasure. And the one thing I did want to leave you with, just in quick summary here, is that in vast majority of situations, as you mentioned, it could be revenue neutral or revenue positive. The way this works is it's software as a service, so it's not a complicated setup. There's no additional setup fees or anything like that. And I know it sounds a little bit, if you guys can remember back to Ginsu Knives of money back guarantee, but I wanted to make sure that you understand that we're very confident in what we're bringing to the market here, and so much so that if you have any problems with it, we'll actually provide you your money back. And so because there will be I's to dot and T's to cross from a questions perspective. We just wanted to kind of take any of the risk out of it from your end. And the reality is that we're very proud to say with over 120 customers so far, I'm going to touch wood, bonk on my head here, that nobody has taken us up on the guarantee that they're still customers to this day. So just wanted to leave you with that. Thanks for your time today. Open to any questions, and you know where to get me.
Thank you very much, Paul. Appreciate it.
thank you.
Thank you.
All right, bye. I just think we need to keep this dialogue moving along. I think it's the problem that I probably see or hear about more than the other commissioners, and on St. Simons, but it really is. I was looking through my file here. One of the neighborhoods is talking about they're going to go get the owner and call them and talk to. Well, one of the owners in a problematic house in one of the neighborhoods lives in California, and he's never around, and there are problems. So it's hard to kind of nail that down, and so you have a problem with noise, and when they say, well, it was a noise ordinance, just call the police. And the next week, it's a new group of kids that are there causing the noise, and the week after that. But if we had some ability of knowing who the true owner was and held them accountable, and again, I'm not trying to impose some sort of new layer of government regulation, but I just think it's become a real business entity, within our community, as the gentleman said, all across the country, that if we don't get at least caught up with it, it's going to become more problematic.
Well, I think you're exactly right, and you said something about the safety issue. I can tell you that's an issue as well. When you get 15 kids piled up in a house,
Right.
not much good's going to happen.
Okay, and that's it. And I don't know if our officers or code enforcement really have the tools to say to them, okay, you got 8 cars outside this 3-bedroom house, you got 15 kids in there.
Yeah.
I don't know if our ordinances deal with that type of thing, but the neighbors sure wish we had ordinances.
Yeah, I don't think the police department is set up to monitor how many people are in their house.
And the only way you're gonna catch this rabbit is with this electronic wizardry that they, that they have. And, we're certainly not gonna do it running up and down the street.
Tanya, maybe you can answer this. I know over the years we've used different firms and one thing or another to try to gauge who is and who isn't paying their fair share and taxes and whatever on the short-term rentals. Do we have any idea? They alluded to about 1,400 short-term rentals in Glynn County. Do we know how many of those are actually paying their fair share and how many aren't or anything? Any idea?
Thank you, Mr. Strickland. I think that because the number is ever evolving, because there are so many people who, if we check today, there may not be someone on Airbnb or VRBO or whatever, but I think it's ever evolving. But I think Monica may provide more insight to that because she has worked with it more. Monica Harden.
How did the grants coordinator wind up doing short-term rentals?
We are jacks of many trades in all of our departments, and this happens to be one of hers.
Okay.
Ask and you shall receive.
Yes.
So right now we have an ongoing list of about 302 agencies or self-reporting individuals, residential properties. And as you saw, the snapshot that Host Compliance showed was approximately 1,400 properties. So right now you see that difference right there.
Wait a minute, you're talking, we've got 302 that are registered or we know about out of 1,400?
That is correct. However, you also have managing agencies, one in particular that probably manages a little bit over 200 properties. So realistically, we have about 500 registered or not. We don't have a registration process, but self-reporting. So out of that 1,400, we're capturing revenues for about 500.
And that's primarily coming from the realtors. I mean, the realtors are paying that.
We have 300. Yeah, we have 320. Just thinking of our local competitors, easy to find. There's another 250. Yeah, so
Stay out of the woodwork.
They're coming.
well, they're all being paid. We're paying.
Yeah, you're paying. You're not the problem.
We're not worried about
We're
you.
not worried about you.
On Airbnb or VRBO, but we're paying their bed tax, their tax.
Yeah.
Right.
So I think your numbers could be a little off, but I do think there's still a lot of money out there.
Correct, and the only way that we know is if you send in, along with your return, the listing of the properties, and that way we're able to track it. Some agencies just give us a lump sum, and we don't know, therefore, how many residentials you're managing. Again, there is no registration requirement, so that makes it a little bit more challenging on my end. So pretty much what I've been doing is capturing revenue month to month, and just making sure that if anyone is late, then, send them a notification that they're submitting their return late.
So, I mean,
And so
I'm
they're
concerned
subject
that
to the bed tax?
Huh?
They're subject to the bed tax?
Yes,
Right, yeah.
Absolutely.
And so,
And what we've done is we've created an unlevel playing field
Right.
for 900 properties out there that are.
so the people
that
that
aren't
are
playing-
reporting,
aren't
they
playing
pay
by the
their
rules.
tax, and the other people,
That's right.
Right.
They
They're
get-
paying it for the other people.
yeah,
That's right.
that's
I
not
don't
fair.
know. I'm not
Murphy,
sure.
I think we need to.
Yeah, I'm not sure we need to, I think we need to explore this. For $67,000 a year, it could potentially bring in $280,000 annually if you charged a registration fee of $200 a unit times 1,400 units.
And if it brought in 67,000, it'd be worth it from the.
Yeah.
Yeah,
From the nuisance
I don't
standpoint.
necessarily look at this as a revenue stream.
No,
I
I'm just
certainly
saying.
want it to be self-sustaining
Sure.
and not be a burden to the county,
Yeah.
but really, the complaints that neighbors have in their neighborhoods, it's just, if you put yourself in their shoes,
yeah.
you had to wake up to this, or see this, or not be able to enjoy your backyard because they're raising cane next door, and buses pulled up and offloaded 12 kids in a 6-bedroom house. you know, with 8 adults, it's just, I don't think.
Let me tell you something. Commissioner Coleman and I lived with the party house for 6 years or so.
Yeah.
So we can tell you how that goes.
Commissioners, if I may, I did a summary of year-to-date, or actually year-to-year from 2013 to 2018 captured revenues. So just to give you an idea of how much is coming in on an annual basis, for 2013 it was 4.8 million, 2014 5.3, 2015 5.9. It has consistently gone up. 2016 6.2. 2017, 6.7, and for 2018, we're still capturing revenues for June. So right now, and again, we're running on a fiscal year, not calendar year.
But you're talking about the bed tax, aren't you?
Right.
Right.
You're talking about the overall bed tax
Right.
that every hotel, motel,
RV,
everything charges.
Right. Right.
Okay.
And that's a tax that these people should be paying also, for
Exactly.
And that's what we're talking about.
Well, I'm with Commissioner Murphy. I think what he's saying, the priority is how do we deal with the problem that we know is out there because of the phone calls, because I've gotten phone calls too. From folks on St. Simon's.
You got short-term rentals in Sterling?
No, from folks.
I'm sorry.
Well, I might, but nobody's complaining about the noise out there. But St. Simon's Island, I know I've received calls, and you know, people. It is my opinion. People want to be able to retreat to their neighborhoods and get away from the hustle and the bustle of the day, whether they're out working or playing. Or, you know, they want to go out and be with the world during the day, but when they go home, they don't want to go home and the party and the noise is continuing in the neighborhood. People expect that there's going to be a certain tone, if you will, certain atmosphere, if you will, in their neighborhoods. And when you go in there and you got a bunch of partiers and they are heck bent on outdoing all 6, 8, 10, 12, 18 of them, they're going to party each other to death all evening and all night. And some of us have been there, not calling any names, but, you know, it's very disturbing in your neighborhood. It is very upsetting to people. Cars coming and going, trash, way more trash being put out than could be put in a trash can. And who do they call? When they call me, there's not a lot I can do. And I'm very sympathetic to them. I'm not so sure there's a lot that code enforcement can do. Boyle policemen, you know, let's say get over there and see something, you know, if the noise level, if they have their little meter or something, there's not a lot they can do. And it would seem to me, I'll tell you what's on my mind, it would seem to me that if we could get the realtors who, you know, government has a hard time fixing things. I mean, we become bureaucratic. We don't fix a darn thing most of the time. But I would like to see the Realtors Association, we got a great one here in Glynn County, you know, have a meeting of the minds amongst the realtors that are handling rental properties and recognize that they have an opportunity here to work with Glynn County and work with their neighbors and their friends and come up with a game plan in-house, if you will, of addressing the same complaints that we get. I don't know if there's a way that you can do your rental leases, your agreements, that has something in there that if you do this kind of behavior, we get calls on this, we're going to come over there and we are going to tell you to move out within 8 hours or something. I don't know what you can do, but anyhow, I just think that that's one option. I think they have a role to play in the community. You know, if you're going to rent your property and it's going to cause a disruption in the neighborhoods and there's calls going out with those disruptions, you know, talk about it and see what y'all can come up to police that.
Well, Mike, I know what you're saying, but let me tell you something. I know for a fact that Hodden Cooper as one of the most restrictive rental agreements that you could ever look at. And they constantly have problems with, you know, whatever it is, noise, trash, parking, et cetera, underage drinking. And, you know, and so they get a call, and then Chris or somebody, you know, responds, and, you know, all they can do is kick them out. But it's already happened, you know, and that's the problem. So.
Well, it's the same issue with us, but I think that if there's any opportunities for the realtors and the property managers to be more proactive, maybe they're doing all you can do. I don't know. Maybe you are. But if there's any opportunities there, I think y'all should explore those and see what you can come up with and you know, manage your resources. Yeah, yes, sir.
If I may, so I'm Chris Michael with Hyde & Cooper. I think the bigger issue is not the professionally managed companies. The issue that you're having is that you have individuals that are renting their property, and you have hundreds of them. You know, if somebody calls us at midnight, we're going to send somebody out to handle the problem. But no one knows on that individual property who to go to. So I think you collectively could get the property managers on St. Simon's to come together and say, here's some smart ideas, but ultimately the commission needs to go out on those individuals that are renting and like you said, make it a level playing field.
Well,
so
just,
everybody's helping
just like with the bed tax, y'all are not the problem. It's these people that have one or two properties, just like Dr. Murphy alluded to a minute ago. You know, the property owner lives in California. He gives a hoot less about what happens to that property at 2 o'clock in the morning. You know, so that's what we've got to try to get a handle on.
Let's see, let's cut to the chase. Go ahead.
I just want to make one comment back to what Commissioner Strickland said a while ago. For those of you who know the challenge, if you will, that we had, and I think our legal counsel over there can verify every word I'm saying here, the time, the effort, the money that was spent, the police officers on the street and everything else was just that one house we had on 16th Street East Beach was, I mean, just that one issue alone could account for oodles and oodles of what we're talking about here. But we spent God knows how much money and time and effort trying to regulate just that one house. And we had owners telling us to go jump in the ocean, and we had nothing in place to really fight them. I mean, we finally got to that point. But if you don't have something in place, just like any other law or code or whatever, these people they're gonna do what they want to do and suffer. I mean, they don't care.
Well, I agree with you, Commissioner Coleman, and that was part of the point I was raising with the gentleman on the phone was, you know, do you have a template of ordinances that we could work with our so you want to cut to the chase, that's fine. How about if I volunteer to take the lead with this with Counselor and maybe Monica?
Yeah, well, county manager's gone. I think she works for him, but
yeah.
but I agree that Monica.
And then maybe you know, continue the dialogue.
What is the downside of this?
I don't
guess
see
it's
any.
Simply financial, but you know, we
get your money back.
You get your money back.
Or the knives.
Peter, you get your money back, so how can it be financial?
So anyway, just to continue the dialogue and report back to you in a period of time where we stand.
And let me tell you something, I think just as an ending thing here, I think we owe it to the people that do the right thing out here every day of every week. And, you know, the people that try to undercut the system and you know, don't pay their fair share. So.
Well, I've had this conversation with Chris before, and they're on board. So.
Oh yeah, I know
we'll try to bring back some information if we have your blessing.
Be nice to have this in place for Georgia, Florida. It'd be a great test. These boys up here will get an education.
Yeah,
we're talking about 2019 or 2020.
I'm talking about 18.
Government, baby.
18. Well, hey.
Well, that was going to be my question. How long? I mean, this is completely unfair, I think.
Right.
I mean, and if we have something that we can go ahead and put in place, how long do you think it would take? I mean,
I think I'm going to have another chat with Paul Hetherington that I've never talked to before in my life.
Okay.
But Counselor has, and Monica, if Mr. Howard gives his blessing, but get that little small group together, ask those questions.
Great idea. Let's
figure
go.
it out, you know. 'Cause-
Yeah, I would just suggest just move forward as fast as
Thank
possible.
you.
Do it.
Good, thank you.
Okay.
If I may, I think the easier part of this is going to be getting the services package to y'all for consideration of approval. That being the modules, some form of that back to y'all saying this is what we want. I think the more time-consuming option or the part of it's going to be the development of the ordinances.
We just gave you another attorney there, Aaron. What do you want?
Not from our end, but just make sure that y'all are okay with it. Develop them, bring it back to y'all for comment and development on that. Because without the ordinances, I think the services, they go hand in hand. So I think
that's what Commissioner Coleman was saying.
Right.
Yeah, that's the big problem you had.
That's the problem.
That we didn't have the laws in place to deal with it. So look, and
Okay.
I'm there all, we'll hopefully not reinvent the wheel. And if they've done this, in Florida and in Georgia, albeit outside Atlanta and California, there should be some reasonable ordinances that could apply to our county.
I agree.
Thank you.
Okay. Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Full speed ahead. Okay. Very good.
Would IT need to be involved in this initial conversation? Yeah, okay, yeah. You don't need me. Okay. All right, item number 4, receive a presentation regarding SPLOST 2016 intersection improvements along Sea Island Road and Frederica Road. Looks like Mr. Pierce walking down the aisle.
All right. We've got a
We're not gonna let
presentation
you talk
for you.
about the brunch bill.
No, not going to talk about the brunch bill. Okay. Well, good afternoon, Commissioners. My name is Ben Pierce. I'm the Roads and Drainage Division Manager for Public Works, and also serve as a project manager for many of the SPLOST 2016 program projects. The intersection improvement projects that we have on St. Simon's Island are 11 altogether, and we have combined them into groups of 3 or 4. Some 2, but we have 4 total groups that we have grouped together, or 4 total projects. We're going to cover 2 of those project groups today. We group them primarily just for ease of management, design, bidding, those sorts of things. So the first project that you have on your agenda is the Sea Island Road intersection improvement projects and improvements. The overall budget for these projects combined together is just a little south of $600,000. And that does include all permitting, design, construction, all aspects of the project. We had a concept review back on just before July 4th to review over the projects and the concepts. That's currently where we're at this point, is the concept phase. And we're looking at final plans to be bid for construction in late August. And it really will depend on the permitting aspects that we have both at the gateway and just north of Hamilton Road there. Okay, so we'll go through each of these just to kind of give a status and update about the scope of what we're doing. So some of the problems that you see right here on the bottom left hand of your screen, it's a roadside view of the current problem that we have. Right now what we have here is a roadway looking south as you come on Sea Island Road, going toward the gateway. Really the main defect that we have here is the turning movement to the right there as you're heading south, and the turning movement there, that transition is a little bit too short for the most travel speed and the design speed. So the consultant that has been hired to review these projects and give us the recommendations and design is a Goodwin Mills and Kaywood, and they're currently doing a great job for us. And what you see in the middle of the screen there is a brief schematic of concept of what they're proposing. Basically, they're looking at bringing the turn lanes and the transition lanes back a little bit further, give a little more space to make the movement out to the east and then back to the west. So we're basically keeping the left-hand turn lane as shown there. We're making a right turn lane, keeping that there. resurfacing the entire roadway and restriping. And you see some of the cost estimates that we have broken out there. So really the bulk of the project is going to be widening, overlay, and restriping. So the next area here is at Sea Island Road, at Hamilton Road. You see at the bottom left hand of your screen, kind of a snapshot roadside view looking south toward Hamilton Road. Right now, the plan for this project is to overlay this portion of Sea Island Road and provide a small 50-foot, what we call a two-stage left turn there. The main problem that we have here at this intersection is vehicles primarily turning north or turning left, wanting to go on Sea Island Road north. And in order to accommodate one or two vehicles coming out and merging into northbound traffic, the option was to provide a small 50-foot a bay area to allow vehicles to merge into the northbound lane. And again, most of this is going to be small widening with a little bit of overlay and some restriping.
Can I talk about that briefly?
Sure, absolutely.
So the issue here really is the folks at Epworth, Mariners Landing, the health center that are coming down Hamilton Road and want to turn left on the Sea Island Road. And as so many left turns are difficult around here, this is particularly difficult. This gives sort of a staging area for 2 or 3 cars to wait until I would call it the eastbound, what did you call it, northbound lane?
Northbound.
Northbound lane is free. Tell them there was some chatter about a traffic light at that intersection.
There was. I was just going to say
Tell me what the feedback we heard at that meeting was that morning.
Yes. So with a traffic signal, I mean, you have various typical warrants that have to be met in order to make a very educated and informed decision about including a traffic signal. Peak hour warrants, 4-hour warrants, pedestrian warrants, 8-hour warrants, well, mostly vehicle volumes. What we've seen here is that it's not not busy in the morning with people turning left. It's just that there's not enough vehicles turning left going northbound to really warrant a full vehicle traffic signal there. There has been some discussion about allowing pedestrian, bicyclist across Sea Island Road. That really addresses our next project, but one of the concerns that was raised was how can people get from the Epworth side of Sea Island Road and Mariners Landing, that half of Sea Island Road, over to the Frederica Academy side of Sea Island Road. And we understand that the challenge with that and the desire that people have to cross that road, and that really what kind of brings us into the next project. Let's look there. So the next, I apologize. So the next project, or the next location, is down at Demery Road in Sea Island. You see a image there, just a roadside view looking north. And so the improvement here is kind of shown in the top right. We're going to provide a sidewalk and a crosswalk there at Demery and Sea Island Road. There have been some discussion with the consultant about providing a acceleration lane going onto the causeway, extending that acceleration lane. However, looking at the benefit versus the cost of that, it really didn't make a lot of beneficial improvement to that based on the cost that they provided to us. So we addressed we're looking at addressing the safety, the pedestrian safety issues here with bringing them all the way down to Sea Island Road and providing a crosswalk there for them to cross at the signal rather than at a mid-block crossing. Well, it kind of be a mid-block crossing there at Hamilton Road.
So to be clear,
Yes.
Ben,
Yes.
there was a lot of discussion about a signal at Hamilton, pedestrian crosswalk at Hamilton. All the traffic experts suggested that would not be the solution. So the solution that's being proposed here is to run a sidewalk, Ben, correct me if I'm wrong, from Hamilton to Demery.
Correct.
For pedestrian bicycle traffic.
Correct.
And then use the crosswalk there on Demery to get across that intersection and thereby get back on the bike path over by Frederick Academy, albeit a little further south or west of where Hamilton is, but 200 yards. I mean, not many miles.
That's correct.
That was just what the experts thought would be
That was the safest. That's the safest location for people to cross the
Is the
road.
proposed bike path that the commission is going to vote up or down on Thursday night, as you look down New Sea Island Road
Yes, sir.
towards Sea Island, is it going to be on the right-hand side or the left-hand side?
There has been some, the concept show it on either side. I mean, you would have to, in order for connection to be available for the Epworth side, you'd have connections on the west side.
If you do it on the left-hand side,
Yes, sir.
going towards Sea Island, you're going to have to pipe that whole ditch through there, aren't you? All the way
Yeah, so
from-
there would be a significant amount of that.
Yeah, 'cause
so
that's a deep ditch.
It's right. Let me go back to the picture.
That's on the left.
This picture here. So it's not classified as an intersection improvement project. It's actually classified as a drainage project for SPLOST 2016. But since it's in this location or this area, and the consultant could do the work as far as design, and we can package it all together. Yes, we are looking at piping that roadside ditch in order to eliminate the roadside hazard.
But the reason I ask that is one of my concerns would be is where this potential bicycle path is placed, because with all the people that stay in Epworth,
Right.
and especially kids,
Right.
having to cross Sea Island Causeway,
Right.
if the bike path is, let's say, on the right-hand side,
Right.
how are you safely going to get those people across New Sea Island Causeway over to that bike path that they want to get on to ride their bicycles?
The safest place is down at Demery. The safest place is at the signalized intersection.
The safest place is what?
The safest place is at the signalized intersection at Demery. That's
You're
the
talking
safest
about
place.
up at Demery and Frederica.
Demery at Sea Island.
I mean, Demery and Sea Island.
Yes, sir.
Right.
That's right.
But we're talking about 2 or 3 different projects.
We are talking about 2 or 3
Shouldn't
different
confuse
projects.
all the rest. So-
Correct.
So the one is, as you look at the right-hand side of the picture there, over the top of the roof of that SUV, that's where sidewalk would go up to Demery to get a safe crossing, correct?
That's correct.
There's another project, is it SPLOST money, Ben, to put a culvert in that ditch there along the right?
Correct.
That's separate.
That's right.
And then, so there's 2. And the third under discussion is a potential grant that Monica wants us to apply for of
Correct.
multiple $1 million of either state or federal money.
Correct.
That is completely separate. from
Completely
discussion.
separate.
So-
That's right.
So I think it'd be premature to sort of decide which side to go. That's
Again, I mean,
with all due respect.
Yeah, I mean, the concepts that were presented before had one option on the east side, one option on the west side, and there was a crossing, and so that's all that it was at that point, was just concepts.
But we're going to culvert that ditch that you see towards the rear of that SUV.
That's correct.
For safety purposes.
For safety purposes.
Regardless of.
There been any consideration at this intersection here of a roundabout?
At Hamilton or Demery?
No. On that, back down, no, not right there, right here.
Right here? I mean, as of recently, internally, we've discussed, what that would look like. But again, there's nothing appropriate for any sort of study, any sort of construction.
I mean, that's one
Yeah, I
of
mean,
the
we've looked at that.
biggest- I would say that's probably the number one biggest traffic backup on the island at any given time.
There's reasons
especially
for that.
coming and going.
There's reasons for that.
And
Yeah.
when you got traffic backed up from Sea Island Road all the way back to Frederica in some cases, you got a problem. And I mean, when you're stopping traffic and you got that many cars, there's never going to be any relief there. That's only going to get worse. And for what people have said and what experience we have in Glynn County about roundabouts, at first a roundabout wasn't a big concern of mine. It was kind of odd, quite frankly. frankly, because we didn't have any. But when you stop and think about bringing traffic to a complete halt versus them continuing to move, maybe at a slow pace, but at the same time, they're not dead halt when you've got thousands of cars going through that intersection every day, coming and going from the island. And so I know one of our local citizens did present a sketch of the redoing of that whole conglomerate right there, coming in across the causeway, making the turn, and not having to have any stops in there at all. When you stop that many cars on St. Simon's Island for 5 minutes, 4 minutes, the backup is tremendous. That problem right there is never going to be solved as long as you keep stopping that many cars at one time on rush hour, going and coming, and even now during the prime times of our vacationers and all. I mean, it's redoing your red light system ain't gonna solve the problem of the traffic on St. Simon's. It's gonna add to it.
Commissioner, I think this is probably a discussion in itself.
Correct.
This is let's move on with these.
Okay.
These
Sure.
improvements, and that'll certainly come to fruition here at some point, but it ought to be set aside for
Okay.
itself.
So the other group of projects that we have 4 additional intersection improvement projects along Frederica Road, starting from Sea Island Road all the way down to the existing roundabout at Demery. Our overall budget for these 4 projects combined together is $427,400. That was just what was appropriated for each of the projects all together. The day after, July 3rd, we had a concept review meeting for these locations, and again, we're looking at having final construction plans ready by late August. So that's a good thing. Thomas and Hutton was solicited and awarded the contract for design and construction management services. So up here at Sea Island Road, it may be a bit difficult to see, but this is the picture. The bottom left end of the screen is looking north toward Sea Island Road along Frederica Road. The big idea, the big problems that we have here is that you have a lot of asphalt on the backside of Harris Teeter with no delineation of where the turn lane is. You see the transition just to the right there. That's a bit short based on roadway standards. And so what we're looking at to do with this project is to widen just a bit to the right-hand side right there on the bottom left-hand of your screen. Widen that and provide a longer taper and turn lane, and really defining where the through lane, where the left-hand turn lanes, and where the right turn lanes are. This will be within from the back half there of Harris Teeter. That intersection, we're staying within the existing footprint of the curb and gutter that's out there and the pavement that's out there. Also to mention is that this project, or these 4 projects, will be combined with the Frederica Road overlay and resurfacing project as well. We thought it would be best to include these 4 projects in with that contract to try to minimize the impact as much as possible.
Before you
yes, sir.
Speak to what we hope to have improved pedestrian crossing there at that intersection.
Correct. Yes, sir. So at Sea Island Road particularly, it may be, again, difficult to see based on the scale, but what we are looking at providing is a crosswalk all the way across Frederica Road to the other side of Sea Island Road. You can kind of see where it's hatched in up there. We are also looking at installing a raised concrete island to give more definition and more of a safe landing area for pedestrians and bicyclists using that crosswalk.
Going to cross Frederica.
To cross Frederica.
From,
that's correct.
Right.
Yes, sir.
With that signalization at hand or some sort of signalization to let the
correct
the bicyclist,
pedestrian
the stroller
signals.
pushing family or the walker to know how much time they've got to get
That's
across?
correct.
Because that really is a problematic.
That is,
intersection.
that is,
Yeah,
that is.
thank you.
All right. The other location, the second of the four, is at Wimberley Road. This is currently what we consider a go-around or an eyebrow along Frederica Road. The picture, the roadside picture there is on the top right this time, looking north. And again, very similar to what we had on Sea Island Road at Hamilton Landing. We're basically improving the transitions around that intersection. So we're going to provide a dedicated left-hand turn lane with appropriate and per design and code transitions and tapers. We're going to move the sidewalk some, just that you see on the right-hand side over there, and some drainage improvements
Can you
as
talk
well.
about crosswalk in that area too?
So the crosswalk, that's right. So it's not shown on this schematic, or we addressed it with the consultant at the concept review, but we're looking at providing a sidewalk on, as you're going north, on the left-hand side of the road to connect Wimberley and I believe it's Riviera?
Rivera. Right.
Rivera,
So-
that's correct.
So the neighborhoods back along in here on the opposite side of the road, I guess that would be west, right? Yeah, west.
Yes, west.
They have a problem getting across Frederica Road to the sidewalk. They have no sidewalk there, and so there's going to be a cross somewhere in here, correct?
That's correct.
With a short sidewalk on this side?
Correct.
To allow the neighborhoods to come together to get to that.
That's
to get
correct.
across.
That's correct. It would be more efficient to have one crossing with the sidewalk than to have two individual crossings
Yeah.
to access the sidewalk.
Devonwood, Peter?
Devonwood, I think, is further south, but it's Wimberley and Rivera. It's by the Lutheran Church. If you
Oh,
look
yeah,
at
yeah.
from the Lutheran Church
I was backwards.
to Wimberley, all those neighborhoods on the west side have difficulty getting across to the sidewalk.
That's right.
So we're going to make it easier for them to get across the sidewalk with a dedicated lighted crosswalk. Is that right?
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yes.
thank you.
Yes, sir. All right. Moving ahead to Riverview Drive. Again, what you have, the problems, the efficiencies that you have here is seen on the lower left hand of your screen. You've gotten, and it may be difficult to see based on the image here, but you only have one lane approaching Frederica Road, and this project is looking, as you see on the top right hand side of your screen, we're creating two dedicated lanes, one left and one right hand turn lane, as well as resurfacing. And we've got plenty of pavement out there to work with. Basically, it's just an overlay and a restriping project.
Weren't we also going to talk about the drainage there, Ben, with a little sort of a retention area there?
So that is one aspect of the project that came up during the investigation of the survey and talking to some of the owners, the homeowners and the business owners there. There is currently if you look on the top right of your screen, that image there, just past the bank, going along Riverview, there's a roadside, basically it's a puddle that's there. It doesn't have any outlet, doesn't have anywhere really feasibly for it to drain to. And one of the options that the consultant's going to come back with at the next phase is to show an underground drainage system there to basically hold and retain the water and let it perk into the ground.
A retention.
An underground retention area.
Perk into the ground and not.
That's correct.
There's really nowhere for it to run off to. Right?
That's correct.
Yeah.
Right. And this is a good area to use that application because again, there's really no feasible outlet for this to get out to outfall. Okay, and then the last project in this group is at the roundabout itself. You see the picture, the roadside view looking to the south, looking at the roundabout. Basically what this improvement is going to be is to remove the hatching that you see, the white hatching that Public Works put in, maybe a year or so ago. It was really to eliminate the conflict that occurred in the roundabout, the weaving action that was occurring. We striped it, and now this project is actually going to make a more defined area there where vehicles are not allowed to travel. That's one portion of the project. The other portion is to widen the roundabout itself, because right now you have a yellow striped portion of the inside of the roundabout, and this looks at actually making that a hardscaped area and more definition to where the vehicles are supposed to travel. All right.
Well, I'd just like to thank Ben and Dave Austin and their team have put in an incredible amount of work with consultants on these projects. They're all SPLOST projects, but we've also been working on a project at Kingsway and Frederica.
Correct.
Whether it's re-signalization of turning lanes or a roundabout.
Correct.
And it's a complicated issue with the airport on the one side and FAA regulations and a whole grove of trees on the opposite side.
Correct.
So we elected not to present that here today because of needing more input.
That's correct.
And the other one is would entail East Beach Causeway with proposed roundabout by the SPLOST project at both Demery and Ocean. And we met the other day and also decided to not overburden this meeting with that complexity and do both of those next month. Is that right, Ben?
That's correct. That's the plan, is that we would get enough input in order for the commission to make a good decision.
So those are still projects that we're going to require more meetings and more discussion with the experts.
Ben, I noticed a lot of these are going to be bid in August. How are you dividing these up? Are all these projects? All these projects
we're going to have to be
time, are they?
Well, I can tell you that the East Beach Causeway projects do not anticipate to have a bidding process this year, this calendar year, 2018. There's a lot that still has to be completed, not just in terms of plan production.
On East Beach.
On these two projects, you know, I mean, again, you're combining this particular project, the Frederica Road intersection improvement projects, with resurfacing. So you're talking about resurfacing all the way from Holly Street all the way down to Kingsway.
Right.
So there's a lot of resurfacing that's included in this project. Again, we'll have to make an internal decision to have some discussion with Dr. Murphy about execution of those projects. But from a timeline perspective, these projects will be ready for bidding if we so choose to in the next couple of months. But the plant,
we would like to get going on sometime in later fall, early winter, correct, Ben?
That's correct. That's correct. Our goal and our plan was, along with the village drainage improvements that we talked about last month here, was to really start after Georgia, Florida, and really start ending and finalizing kind of in the beginning of March, the time frame.
Before we get into
Spring break, Easter, and early spring break. It's going to be a difficult, as we mentioned last time with the village drainage project, there's really no great time to do any of this. It's going to be a challenge, but I think there seems to be some degree of agreement that, you know, November, December, January for the roads might be the best. And we did have a meeting with many of the merchants from the village to discuss the drainage project, and Ben and David and Burke Murph, who's the project manager. Would he be called the project manager, Ben? He's the engineer.
Yeah, he's the engineer.
Really did a fine job in dealing with all the questions of the village. But no matter how many times you discuss these things, it's going to be a challenging few months for St. Simon's Island.
Sure.
Well, that's great. Thanks for all you've done on this too, Peter.
Thanks. These guys do all the hard work. I just show up to the meetings.
They get paid.
That's right. I forgot that too.
Okay. Any other questions?
Any other questions for Ben?
No. Great, Ben. Thank you.
So you don't want to do the brunch bill? All right. Next item on the agenda is the brunch bill.
Just put it on the agenda for Thursday night and let's vote on it.
Who's got that one? Anybody want to talk about it?
I can talk about it, Commissioners.
Okay.
You mind if I sit here, or you may go to the podium?
No, you sit right there.
Okay. So this one's quick and simple. So this year, the General Assembly passed a law, which is what they call the brunch bill, which allows service for alcohol to start at 11 a.m. on Sundays as opposed to 12:30 p.m. So it extends out the period of time for restaurants, qualifying restaurants and hotels serve alcohol at their establishments. The first step in the process is for the Board of Commissioners to pass a resolution, which is on your agenda for this Thursday, in a couple days. If you pass that resolution, then it'll be forwarded to the Board of Elections to have a referendum in November to ask the voters if that will be allowed. If it's allowed, then we will present an ordinance amendment for y'all to consider, and I will get that in motion to be approved if you so desire. If there are any questions, we'd be happy to answer them.
When would it go to a vote?
November? General election, November 6th.
So it'll be on the agenda, on the ballot with all the other, there will be no additional cost for, it's a special election, but it'll be held in conjunction with all the other general election items that day.
So the November would be the referendum?
That's correct.
Yeah. Okay.
If by law we have to have a referendum, it's not something that the commissioners can vote up or
It has
down.
to be a referendum.
Okay.
The commissioners have to authorize the referendum be held, so the first step is for the board to consider it. If you did not adopt it or decided not to do it, then it would go no further.
I don't know whether you said it's got to be before the Board of Elections by July the 27th.
That's correct.
That's the reason it was kind of a crunch time to get it on this thing, so.
To give the Board of Elections ample time to work with the state to put it on the ballot, to build a ballot, and also by state law, we have to advertise and so many times. So there is a deadline on it, and if you do this, we'll have sufficient time to meet that deadline.
We can always
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Let's go.